Digilogue fam, it's your boy Drew. Happy Sunday. Hope you guys are enjoying your holiday weekend. Before we start, before I introduce my guest, I just want to say thank you for all the support that you've been giving us throughout this pandemic, and we're going to continue to program some amazing content just to support you guys creatively. So hope you guys are staying safe and creative at home. Super excited for episode 15 of the L's, aka Lessons Learned, with our boy, Great Rizzy. What's up? What's up,
What's
Greg?
going on? Drew, what's up, man?
How's before we go into the episode, how's the family? How's just kind of like you handling the pandemic, and just how are you being creative and productive?
Family is good, thankfully. Very adaptive to what's been going on, but luckily the kids have been good. The wife has been good. If anything, we haven't killed each other in the house, so that's always a plus.
Point
Creatively,
taken.
yeah, for real. Creatively, I would say, just start trying to stay busy. Definitely reading a lot more than I have in the past, because a lot of times we make the excuse we don't have the time, and you try to fit in
Right.
chapters on the train or whatever. So that's going well. But just trying new stuff, things, stepping out, trying new things.
Right.
What works, I keep. What doesn't, I throw away.
Right. I know we spoke earlier this week. You spoke about your love for Instacart.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, bro. Let me tell you. And if they need testimonials, all they gotta do is hit me up on Twitter. I'll send one twice a week. You know what I'm saying? That's how much we love it over here.
No, shout out to Instacart. Hopefully we get a brand sponsorship for you. You're gonna be their biggest brand ambassador.
Yeah, for the right reasons too.
Yeah, for the right reasons, for sure. No, that's super dope. And just for our audience, for our digital community, which consists of artists, producers, songwriters, music professionals, and more importantly, music lovers, talk about your role, like what you do, and to give some context.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I consider myself a creator. I look at it in this order: husband, dad, creative, right? Then absolutely a lover of music. I grew up in hip hop. Right now, I currently am an on-air personality on Sirius XM. I work on two channels, one being Eminem Shade 45 during the late nights, and then on Hip Hop Nation during the middays, 11 to 5
Dope,
p.m. on the East.
dope. That's awesome, man. And I know we connected. We both shared kind of a panel type conversation. So shout out to Jason Grant in the Heavy Sounds team
Right.
for curating a really dope conversation. Was it about a week ago? And that's how we connected off that. But more importantly, we know mutual people. So the community is very small. It's funny that I think when I was working at Def Jam, you had stopped by the office, and we said, "What's up?" I was like, "Oh, you're Greg." So,
Yeah, and it's crazy how it always comes full circle. You just have to hope that you wasn't a total douche or dick when you come back to it. You know what I'm saying? But that
lessons
wasn't the
learned.
case. Yeah, that's definitely a lesson learned right there.
Respect people. Don't be an asshole. You never know when you're gonna meet them again.
Right,
You know,
right.
very, very true. So I know, for the L's, we always kind of just kind of unwrap, people's, brand and like where they grew up, because a lot of people may see you now, but they don't know anything about you, right? They don't know anything about your upbringing and your interests. So maybe talk a little bit about, where you grew up, your early influences in music, whether, also maybe in sports, because I know we spoke about your passion for basketball, but, who are like those early artists that you were listening to? And maybe you had your parents, were they playing music in your house? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in the South Bronx. I definitely grew up in a time where hip hop was being really, it was malleable. That's a good SAT word right there. So it was being structured at that point, right? And
Yeah.
at any given time, man, where I lived in the South Bronx, I was literally 10 minutes from Harlem. So I could go up the block and see somebody like Fat Joe or Big Pun. I could go down the block and I could see somebody like Ultramagnetic MCs or Tim Dog or somebody like Dougie Fresh just coming through the block real quick. I was able to see, a lot of different, right, especially in that time, the South Bronx was considered probably the poorest county in the States. You know what I'm saying? So of course
Right.
I saw a lot of hustlers that was going on. The drug, the crack era was big. So I saw all of that. And of course, what you heard all the time was hip hop. Now, of course, around that time you used to hear a lot of freestyle.
Hmm.
House was starting to pick up a little bit after that, but hip hop very early on, like especially here in New York City, you're talking about block parties. So in the summertime, I know they don't do it as much now here in New York City because
Right.
the minute you play something too loud on your phone, the cops want to walk over. But we're talking
Right.
about speakers that were probably 11 feet in the air, and DJs just coming out, setting up, and just doing it in the park. So around that time, Rob Bass, Easy Rock, definitely Big Daddy Kane was really big. Native Tons,
Crazy.
De La
Hmm.
Soul,
De La
of
Soul.
course, like Black Sheep, Jungle Brothers, Queen Latifah. All of these things were starting to be born, and this is before we even got to the holy trinity of Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas.
Right.
So, I used to hear a lot of that music, but growing up in the South Bronx, one of the schools I went to was a school of the arts. The only reason they turned into that school because they were in jeopardy of closing. It was a parochial school
Mm-hmm.
called St. Augustine, and then it turned into St. Augustine School of the Arts. And that's what really opened me up to music theory. So I
Wow.
was able to, and I don't even think we had a chance to talk about this. I was able to jam with people like Wynton Marsalis, like Leonard Bernstein, like
Wow.
Max Roach, So if for all the jazz lovers out there, I know my man
Yeah.
Sky Zoo would love that. But that really opened up my musical palette, but also opened
Hmm.
me up a lot because we were able to travel and see a lot
Right.
more. So I had the best of both worlds, in my opinion. I had the block, I had the raw, I had the real, but I also had
Right.
what happens once you go ahead and put in the work to make your dream a reality.
Right. No, that's amazing. I mean, did you have like early inspirations of like becoming an artist, given your interests at school?
Maybe, maybe for all of, I don't know, a day and a half.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like I remember, and I got to shout out my man, Mr. Rogers, old man Jo, over on 169th Street, in between Third Avenue and Fulton Avenue. It was the nine.
Hmm.
Actually, the nine went from like Webster all the way up to Boston Road. It might even went even further past that, but that's what the nine was for us. And I remember my boy
Right.
like, "Yo, we gonna have a freestyle session. Come through, just have your rhymes, have them shits ready to go." I was like, "All
Yeah.
right, bet." So, I kicked my rhyme and everybody looked. It was quiet. I didn't know. I was like, "Oh, I must have killed it." Everybody just started laughing. Yo, Drew, this shit was embarrassing, man. And I was like, "Oh man, it's like, yo, that was funny." They laughing at you, they patting you on the back. Yo, it's all right. Don't worry, next time. And at that point, I was like, "Yeah, this rhyming shit ain't
Defeated.
for me. It ain't for me." But I still knew I wanted to be a part of music in some
Right.
way, shape, or form. I still wanted to be a part of the process of creation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, after you dropped your freestyle, you're like, do you remember your freestyle at all?
Um, Not really. I just
I'm
remember.
not gonna put you on the spot.
I remember this There was this part, and it went to it, and it was like the very end was like, without the bullshit. It was like, back then the rhymes. Back then, you would really just drag out a lot of your rhymes and be very very
Right.
theatrical with it and blah blah blah. And my shit must have sounded like some 70s shit. I don't know what it sounded like to the guys, man, but they was just like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
It was just one of those moments. But I
Right.
was proud of it. I did it. You know what I'm saying? I did it, and I
Yeah.
realized it wasn't for me, that part, but this
Right.
business, this music still was.
No, for sure. You're growing up, you're in high school. I'm sure your peers, like, do you remember like those first like those underground parties, like that first show, like like, because I remember my first show, and like those are the moments I feel like I really that transcended my passion for music, like, what were those like pivotal moments for you, especially as a young age, because we're so impressionable. We're just like, wow, like this is what it's like, you know,
Well, I think
I love this.
what was really funny about that, Drew. Before I even really got to my show, where there was actually like a hard ticket sell, shows were
Hmm.
going on in these block parties all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I remember it was one of the first times I saw Fat Joe rhyme, and this is when Fat Joe was
Crazy.
still,
Yeah.
he was making the transition from Fat Joe the gangster to Fat Joe the gangster who happens to rhyme. So
Right.
I was seeing a lot of stuff like that. Shout out to Nice and Smooth too, you know, seeing them very early on. But I would say the park showed me a lot of that. My very first show happened to be I want to say R&B, a show that I paid for with my money. I was in high
Hmm.
school, and it was who was on tour? I think it was an Uptown tour. And rest in peace to Andre Harrell. I think it was an
Yeah.
Uptown
Rest in peace,
tour,
man.
and it had everybody on there. It was like Lil Sean was on there. Jodeci was very new. Put
Oh
it like
man.
this: Father MC was one of the headliners, and Mary was still singing. You know, she was still doing her backup for
Right.
him. Same thing with Jodeci, and then
Crazy.
they were coming out to do their parts. Actually, it might have been Jodeci's show. Actually, Jodeci wasn't singing backup for that, but maybe Mary was doing it at that time. But that was like my first show, and to see all of them, I was just like,
Right.
wow, you know, like it was big because at that time, the only thing that you were really watching to see at
Hmm.
least the representation of hip hop the way we saw it all the time with the music was probably Video Music Box. Shout out to Uncle Ralph McDaniels.
Wow. Video music box. Haven't heard that term in a while.
Yeah, man,
It's so
it was
crazy.
that was like UHF channel 31 or something crazy like that because we didn't even
Yeah.
have cable in the bro. They had yank cable
I
at the
know.
time. Yeah.
That's crazy. And in terms of like venues, like obviously there's staples, right? Back in the day there was like Tunnel, SOBs is still a staple. Um, there's other venues like Urban Plaza, but like in the Bronx, was there like a venue that like people would just like perform at, or was it in the city that you would go to?
Um,
Do you
in the
remember?
in the Bronx, you had the Fever. I was a little young to go into the Fever. I didn't really go into the Fever until it was like, you know, it was on its probably on its way to closing. But the Fever over
Right.
there on Tremont Avenue, the Savoy, which was over there like just off 167th Street, people used to go in there and rock out a lot. Um, for
Dope.
me, you know, just venue wise, I would say definitely, you know, in the city, a lot of people used to go to some of the spots that you name, but I'm trying to think of some of the spots. Like the Roxy was still very big.
Yeah.
People would go there. There was a spot that wasn't Irving Plaza. It was like you had to go downstairs in Union Square. It might have been Union Square. Like there used to be a lot of parties that went there. Rooftop
Mm-hmm.
used to be a lot of parties. And this is a little bit, you know, I ain't that old. I don't want you to think I'm that fucking old. Nah. But I used to see things in there, right?
Yeah.
But again, like, you know, 60, I'll keep on going to the block party, 63 Park, the
Right.
blue courts over in Forest Projects, huge. If you went
Right.
down, if you had the heart, if you was down there in Webster and Washington Avenue in the Bronx, you used to see a lot over there behind Yankee Stadium. You and
Yeah.
what's that? McCombs Park. You used to see a lot over there. So a lot of what I got to see early on was in the
Hmm.
parks, and then eventually, you know, I started going into the clubs, and you know, now I could say it. Like I was probably about 16 when I first started sneaking in the club.
Right, right. No, it's good because like it's good to kind of give some context as to like what the music, kind of environment was like in New York during that time, especially for the community because obviously it's different now. People get music, it's like in their phone, tomorrow, but you're discovering this at the parks. If you're your friends, people are creating like tapes and like recording them and creating their own mixtapes and stuff, sharing it with their
Right.
their friends as well.
Right. And
Just kind of
before I
giving
say,
context to the culture.
let me say this real quick, Drew. I don't mean to cut you off. Also, you got to give a nod to all the mixtape DJs, right? So
Yeah.
somebody like Kid Capri, very big, very, or
Yes.
you know, Red Alert,
Oh, geez.
very big. You know, you were always listening to what they were doing because they were breaking a lot of the music. But then you got to
Right.
think about like doo-wop. You got to think about Clue. I mean, Clue was a little bit later on. You got to think about people like
Yeah.
you know, just being able to hear stuff from, I don't want to say Clark Kent put out mixtapes, but I remember hearing stuff from him. And if it made its way from Brooklyn all the way
Mm-hmm.
up to the Bronx for us,
Yeah.
that was a journey. You feel what I'm saying? To hear about somebody early on, like, yo, who's that kid? Because
Right.
the biggest thing coming out of Brooklyn, the biggest import, so to speak, or export was Big Daddy Kane for us in high school. So it said a lot about how you got your music. You really had to search for it. You really had to look
Right.
for it. It wasn't just on demand, ready for you, accessible whenever you wanted it.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a different time. Like it wasn't just like given to you. You couldn't search for it.
Right.
You really had to find it. Find it. so obviously you're experiencing music in different capacities. What was that moment when, as far as like New York artists like Biggie, when was that moment you started hearing about him, during this time? Like,
I was lucky because a bunch of my friends, when we were about to go to college, a bunch of my friends went to go intern at Uptown Records, right?
okay,
So I was up on Biggie super early. I'm talking about before even before Party and Bullshit. Like we knew
wow,
it was coming. This is when he still was signed somewhat through Uptown because that party, and shout out to Ed Lover and Dr. Dre, that Party and Bullshit soundtrack was
yeah,
on Who's the Man soundtrack. But
right,
like I saw that super early. I was in college when I first heard about Nas.
mm,
And the same thing with Hove in a sense, because I have some cats that I rock with out in Brooklyn that was in that scene. Plus, you also got to
right,
remember when he did, I think when he was featured on Just Can't Get With That or something like that with Ski, which was I forgot what Ski's group was, man. But it was like he was rapping super fast. And I always remember seeing the video, all
yeah,
video music box. But it was oh man, what was it? Not nice. I'm bugging. Original Flavor. He was
original
featured on
flavor,
that
okay,
song, and it was like boom, 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 boom. So we knew a lot of these. I knew that a lot of these cats was coming. Nobody knew
yeah,
that they were going to be as big as they were going to be, though. And I think that was very influential. And that the way they each kind of rose, that was
right.
something that I wanted a piece of.
Yeah, and speaking of that, like this was like, I think a lot of people debate in terms of like eras of classic just hip hop, right? People claim the 90s. Obviously, I grew up in the 90s. I was a young kid, but that's what I grew up listening to. But, for you, as you're like experiencing this in college, like how do you start stepping up in terms of just diving into the music space? Your friends are interning at Uptown. Like, how do you start getting involved? Like, what's that first opportunity for you?
Well, Street Team, and let me shout out these two guys too, man, because I would be playing myself if I didn't shout them out when it comes to playing new music.
Yeah.
Stretch Armstrong and Bobbito. Shout out to those
Yep.
guys, man. Where and
Yes.
Bobbito's another basketball head. I gotta actually hit him up and see if he's gonna be
Yeah.
playing anytime soon. But for me, I went to Stony Brook University, so I got involved with kind of throwing parties. That was kind of like that first little glimpse into it. When I came out of there, I ended up doing my internship over at Def Jam, so that exposed me to
Oh,
a
really?
whole lot. Yeah, so I was working with Russell Simmons was pretty much like a figurehead at that point. He was transitioning into branching out the business in other places, but Leor was still there. Jason
Right.
Jackson, shout out to Jazz Young. Julie Greenwald was there. Mike Kaiser
Wow.
was there. This is just before Kevin Lyles got there. You had Say over at I think the drawing board. So I was really exposed to a whole lot just being in that space as an intern. Like I know interns
Right.
nowadays, you demand money and shit. There's all kinds of stuff
Talk
going
about
on.
that. Talk
Oh,
about that though,
bro.
because like interns now is, they get the red carpet treatment.
I,
So,
I don't really know who set this. I guess I don't even know what to call it. Mutiny off. I don't know who did it. But I feel like I'm not mad at people wanting to get paid for their work, but I think they put the pay above the experience. And your internship is really supposed to be for you to get as much experience as you can and be exposed, hopefully, to great people whom you're working with and working for. So you can
right.
kind of see what their process is and how they do their work. But for me, being an intern over there, like I had a chance to work on Month of the Man, which was Method Man and Redman's pretty much
Crazy.
it was Method Man's first rolling out for Tikal and maybe Redman's second. You just had a lot of different acts that were over there. You know what I'm saying? I was able to see the beginning of Hove coming over off of that priority deal
Wow.
and being with Def Jam. I was able to see who was it? Like LL Cool J was there. J.O.
Yep.
Felony from the West Coast. Like I'm seeing West Coast acts that that really meant a lot to me at the time because you
Right.
figure before I went to school. I think in '89, man, I went to before I went to college, and I didn't go to college in '89. Again, I'm not saying I'm that old. That's not even
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
But my aunt took me out to me and my brother out to LA for a Christmas gift. And
Mhm.
they were talking about at the time, my aunt was beautiful. She was a model, all this great stuff. She really didn't deal with black or brown men too much, and I was used to that. But when we went
Mhm.
to LA, I said, yo, Playboy, the guy that she was dating at the time, I think he was a professional golfer, which was cool. Don't get me wrong, Drew. Hey,
Yeah,
you can hit a ball
can't
270 yards.
can't
He
knock
did
the
it.
hustle. Yeah,
Yeah, but take me to Watts, take me to South Central, take me to
right.
Compton. And I didn't know if she would be able to do that for me. And I was surprised when she was able to make that call. And I was able to see that very early on. From the music I was hearing, I was able to see it and I respected it in a different
Crazy.
light. So by the time I got into my internship and being able to work with West Coast artists, I felt
Mhm.
like I had a better understanding of what they were talking about than somebody who had never been.
Mm. Wow, that's super interesting. Given that obviously you grew up in the Bronx, you had the opportunity to go out to LA and kind of see it firsthand versus just listening to it. I think
Right,
that's you got to connect the dots that way.
right.
So as you're at Def Jam, do you remember like like that intern? Everyone has an intern story where like like they have to do so many crazy things just to achieve something. Whether you had to get 10 cups of coffee or like you were in a rush, but like you managed to do it. Was there
Um,
like this crazy task where someone was like, "Hey, you have to figure this out," type of thing?
Well, you got to remember who I was interning with. Like, shout out to my sister Jazz Young. Phenomenal. She's a professor now, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
at Monroe in the Bronx. But
So,
I reported to Jazz Young, who was split between Julie Greenwald, who was really dope. I love Julie, but Leor Cohen. So can you imagine? The amount of it was like being in a fucking commercial, and you just like at the time I had hair. Like every time he yelled, it was like, bro, why are you yelling all the fucking time, right? And at the same time, you thinking like, yo, who is this dude, man? Like, who the fuck is he yelling at? But at the same time, you're like, yo, he the one who got the keys. So you know what? I'm gonna eat this. I'm gonna learn from this cat. I'm gonna see what this
mm-hmm.
is right here. Like how
Right,
can this let me not worry about the yelling. Put my ego to the side. Let me really
right.
probe and listen for the keys that I need to take from this experience. And
Great
Leo
lesson.
used to yell all the fucking time, all the time, all the goddamn time, dog.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But I guess it would be that, and you just like, yo, we can't fuck this up. We cannot fuck this up at all. Because it's not
Right.
even Russell. You're not even worried about Russell at this point. I don't want to deal
Right.
with the tall Israeli guy down there that just does not stop yelling for some reason. I don't even know how this guy didn't pass out yet from yelling all the time. So it would be working with him on projects where we had to report up to him.
Word. I can imagine. I've always heard interesting Def Jam stories, so it's always cool just to hear from the people that were going through it during that time.
Right. Shout out to
Um,
everybody who was down there on Varick Street. For everybody,
yes,
it
Varric.
might have changed by the time it got up to 8th Avenue, but for everyone who was on Varick,
Yep.
you know what I'm talking about. It really made a different type of executive if you were able to move through that. And I gotta say this part, like at the time, I didn't go all the way through the process. You know what I'm saying? Like I had my grandmother wasn't doing really well. She was sick. She was off and on.
Right.
So I made a decision like, yo, I got to step out of this. And then I was like, all right, I think this is good. Let me get back into it. But by the time I got back into it, which was probably about 2 years later, something like that, I had
Right.
already saw the people who I came in with, Drew, they had already
Mm,
leveled up. You feel what I'm
wow.
saying? It's like you could see
Yeah.
they were head and shoulders above the rest that were out there doing what they were doing. I got to
Right.
shout out Thomas Lytle too. He was really big over there as well. But the
Wow.
that was a lesson. That was a L that I took, and of course you
For
take it
sure.
for family. But sometimes they'll tell you the great ones find a way to make it happen. It also
Hmm.
takes a lot to do. It takes a lot to do with timing and you finding yourself. I didn't
Right.
necessarily know what I wanted to be at that time, but I
Right.
definitely got the lessons out of being there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, as you're doing this, like what are some of your interests like in terms of, because you're still figuring things out, right? You're seeing different roles, you're seeing all these big artists that you've listened to, and now you're just like you're seeing them at the office, and you're how like what are some of the things that you're interested like in terms of, there's different roles, whether it's an A&R or like a marketing. I mean, radio obviously was is huge at the time, but was there anyone kind of like guiding you in terms of like mentorship? Was it anyone kind of like you could kind of lean on for like questions during this time?
I would say Jazz Young was a big one, and the thing
Hmm.
that you got to realize is that people can only help you but so much. It's like you have to be
Right,
willing to receive the information. You have to apply
right,
it at some point.
right.
And at that time, I still was like very up in the air, right?
Hmm.
Do I want to work in A&R? Because at the time, A&Rs were very, very, very vital to the success of a record, of an album
Right.
coming out, of an artist's success. Do I want to be in marketing? Do I want to be in sales? I definitely wasn't thinking about radio at the time. So
Right.
I just wasn't quite sure, and at this time we're talking, after doing that internship, after taking some time off, after coming back, I
Hmm.
remember my man, Mr. Rogers. Now he goes by Everything Costs. He was like, "Yo, Rick, this Mr. Rogers is still." He was in the room. We might have been at his house. No, we was in Old Man's house. Shout out to Old Man Unstoppable. When it came to him saying like, "Look, we're gonna make this team for my musical career. I need you to
Right.
be there. I want you to be down, but I don't know what you want to do." And I was like, "Well, I'll be on the management side." Automatically
Mm.
came out my head. I was like, "But I really don't know much about management, but I want to be on the management side." And I remember him connecting me with our man Rod Glasgow. I literally, like,
Hmm.
at the time, I think I might have met him at this spot called Nels. And Nels is what is Nels? Nels is up and down now
Oh, up and down. Oh,
on
wow.
14th Street, right?
On the west, yeah,
So
west side.
we go to Nels. I think I meet him at an open mic, which was still very big back then. Now them shits is like
Hmm.
dinosaurs. You only read about them in certain books, but very
Right.
vital to the business because you got to see what people are doing out there. And we had a
Right.
discussion and we clicked. And I remember, if we're moving a couple of years down, like my grandmother, event she passes away, and I remember three
Sorry to hear
people
that.
the three people who first came to my house was my man
Hmm.
Rod Sledge, Mr. Rogers. They lived in the same building where I used to always be at when I grew up, and
Right.
Rodney
Wow.
Glasgow. They came, and it was those three. And at that point, I was like, you know what? These are real friends, And I literally was about to get me and my brother. We lived with our grandmother. We was about to get evicted. We eventually got
Wow.
split up,
Crazy.
and I ended up going to live with Rod Glasgow. And
Wow.
he at the time he was working at Sony. He was working with Tommy
Hmm.
Mottola.
Wow.
He was traveling a lot, and he was like, "Look, man, you can live here in my spot in Harlem. Just walk my dog.
Hmm.
I'm on the road. Get your shit together, figure it out." And
Crazy.
I was like, "Yo, this shit is crazy," but all right, cool. And that went from a good friend to a
Hmm.
mentor to my
Right.
brother. Like, this is hardly any
Wow.
times that you do not see us together. Like one of my biggest plaques, and I don't want to skip too far ahead, but one of my biggest plaques that I got from Cardi B and her team over there at Atlantic, I
Yeah.
gave to him because it
That's
was it
dope.
was just like coming full circle. He's the one who kind of got me into management, at least trying my
Wow.
hand at it.
Wow. That's amazing. And I think we want to kind of share that to the audience just because, finding those people that really support you, even at your darkest times, is so key. And it comes full circle when you're in a position to like give back. It's important to like, pay it forward that way, right?
Right.
Now you gave the plaques, which is awesome. So you're evicted. So we fast forward, you're dealing with those circumstances. Do you see that kind of this opportunity where it's like, I gotta make shit fucking happen because I got this, I'm staying at this guy's crib for free. I'm still figuring things out. Like, what's going through your mind? And like you're managing, you have a management position, but like what's going through your mind, trying to like make it.
I want to say like along the lines in dealing with Mr. Rogers, it was good, but you know, like most managers, you ain't getting paid. You know, it wasn't really anything that was happening
Right.
financially. You know, the
Right.
exposure was great, but after a while, Drew, you're like, yo, fam, my pockets is looking thin. I need to make something else happen to
Right.
subsidize this dream. So along the way, we in working with Mr. Rogers and the group, the associates, shout out to Mark Monarch, J.O., Old Man, Trev. It was and Chuck Barrett. It was like we were able to get this young lady. Her name was Armoretta. Is Armoretta. She actually she's
Mm,
still performing till this day. We were able to get her a single deal, I
that's dope.
believe, over at Epic at the time, and that was like, you know, progress. Like, oh shit, okay, it's about to pop off. At the
Right.
time, Epic had, I think, Cameron. This is like Cameron's first album. We was like, oh, we good, we are good. It was like I forgot the two guys. Mark Morrison was over there. It was like, yo, son,
Hmm.
it's about to take the fuck
You're
off.
set. Y'all are set.
Hell yeah, it doesn't. But you know, the dream was there.
Right.
Um, Raj starts doing some major writing. He was writing for like Puff and some of his
Wow.
albums, so that was great. That was good to see him do his thing. I ended up getting a regular job. I went to go start a job. This is like 96, 97. I went and started working over
Hmm.
at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
And what Mount Sinai did here in New York City, if you don't know about Mount Sinai, at the time,
Yeah.
it was one of the biggest hospitals in probably the country. Now I know it's
Yeah.
definitely one of the biggest hospitals in the country because they were buying up everything.
For
But it was
sure.
much. It is a campus because it's a medical school on top of it being just a, you know, a hospital. But
Right.
it opened me up again to networking with even more people. And here, this is the thing, after being there for so many years and then starting to figure out like, all right, what I'm gonna do. I was working at medical
Right.
records at the time. I had a family down there. You know what I'm saying? A family, like
Hmm.
literally. I could do no wrong. If I had to jet out real quick, I could say this now. Statute of limitations is up. Y'all can't do nothing to me. If I had to jet out, they would support
Yeah.
me. They would hold me
That's
down.
dope.
All that great stuff. But Drew, what I found out in working at that space is
Yeah.
that Dame Dash worked there. Fat Man
Really.
Scoop,
I
Fat
did
Man
not know
Scoop,
that.
Fat Man Scoop was there. At the time, I don't know. This is really weird. This is older than me again. I'm not dating myself. I want to be clear about this. But somebody like
Message
Eddie,
across. Yeah.
message. But somebody like Eddie Chiba, if you ever heard the song Chiba Chiba, y'all, Eddie
Yeah.
Chiba was working there at the time, and he
Wow.
was he was part of the success for Russell Simmons. So I'm a
Hmm.
big person with, you know, taking signs and saying, you know what, I'm
Hmm.
in the right place at the right time, because if these guys can do it, someone like a Fat Man Scoop or someone like a Dame, that's showing me that I can do it. If Eddie Chiba is here, then that's also showing me that sometimes you put your best foot forward, but it doesn't work out. But
Right.
you got to take your responsibilities and take care of them. So at
Right.
that time at Mount Sinai, I learned a lot, man. I really got cool with a lot of different people. It you know, as much as you keep it real on the block, you have to be able to diversify. And what I
Yeah.
did at that space was that being able to walk in different circles. And different circles doesn't always mean, you know,
Hmm.
different races. It could be different faiths. It could be different
Right.
views economically, financially,
That's a great point.
educationally, all of that. In that space, Mount Sinai played a big part for me.
I think that's a great point, especially like a lot of young music creatives, artists who are obviously trying to navigate in the space. And I think it's important, to follow your dreams. And Edith, one of our past guests, mentioned this is that, but you also have to be realistic, right? You can have the day job from 9 to 5 and still pursue your dreams from 5 to 11. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, and no one should be ashamed to do that because the music industry, especially in the very beginning, you don't make a lot of money. That's just the reality of it. And I think it's important to like just message that across because people have the assumption that they have to get the best job immediately after school.
Right,
Um, have to like break this record tomorrow, type of thing, and that the reality it doesn't happen.
right,
You're gonna
right.
be grinding during the day and also grinding at night and in the morning. So
hmm
you
And
gotta
and
have a
if
plan.
if someone is looking at this right now and they're saying like, well, look at him, he's saying, yeah, look, I was that person. I just said it. I don't know how many times in our conversation, Drew, where I thought
Mhm,
it was gonna pop, and it didn't. But the thing that I did learn, and the thing that I did see with a lot of different examples, were that
mhm,
people didn't give up. They just kept on finding different ways
right,
to, be able to chase whatever that dream is, or chase whatever that goal was.
right.
And that's what I figured, I'm gonna keep on doing it. I don't know how, but I'm gonna keep on.
Yeah, and to your point, as you're doing this and you're chasing it, what was that first win for you? Like that real, whether it's a small win, big win, where you're like, okay, all right,
Right.
I'm working on Mount Sinai, but there's some light to this, for
Mhm.
me to really like work in the music industry.
We I remember my man at Africa, my man Edmund Kofi,
Okay,
brother, strong brother from Ghana. And his story is amazing too. But I remember he approached me one day and he was like, "Yo, bro, I see you know a lot of people." He's like, "Yo, I'm thinking about putting this team together to throw parties." And I used to throw parties in school and
yeah,
stuff. I was like,
yeah,
all right, let me know what kind of plan you got. And he was like, I'm inviting a couple of people down. We're going to meet at a McDonald's down on 50 something street.
hmm
And, so we can have this meeting. I'm like, you want to have a meeting at McDonald's? I was like,
okay,
all right, cool, 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 cool. So Drew, when I get there, like the meeting, there was dudes in every seat of the whole McDonald's down there. And I'm like, yo, I sat through it and everything, and I'm sitting there, and as soon as it finished, I was like, he's like, so what did you
hmm
think? I was like, yo, this is cool, but I can tell you right now, if there's 100 guys here, there's only gonna be 10 left, man. Ain't nobody sticking around for what you said. Like, it's a great idea, but people want to get paid right now. They don't want to
right,
necessarily put this, whatever work that you want to put in. And it happened, it got whittled down to I think like 5 or 7 of us. But that
wow,
group ended up being we named it Uprising. Because Africa was very, you could tell by his nickname, he was very pro-black,
right,
pro-Africa,
right,
pro-home, you know what I'm saying? And he wanted to call it Uprising because it's about not so much an uprising of a coup, but an uprising of enlightenment and going out there and getting the
hmm
job done. So we did our first party down at like 95 Leonard Street. I forgot the name of the spot, but it was a small spot. And I was like,
downtown,
what, downtown, yeah. And it
yeah,
was
yeah,
it was like one of our first wins. I think we got 250, 300 people in there. And we did a spot
wow,
there a
that's a big
couple of
party.
times. And we kept on building. So each time our party got bigger, bigger, and bigger and bigger. And I want to say every one of those were a win, but the
hmm
championship, like that chip, was when we did
right,
a party at we ended up booking Hammerstein Ballroom. And shout out to
wow,
everybody else who's done it. Drew, don't get me wrong. I love what
it's a
like
big
what the
space.
guys at at now Henny Palooza, what used to be Duce Palooza. I love what they've
hmm
done. I love what my man Ouija, who is now over at the Brooklyn Circus, what they did
hmm
with Ramsey Racing. They did those parties. But we were able to do that party without any sponsorship, without any backing, without any advertising, fucking what,
right,
what do you call that? Like, targeted. No, no, we wasn't
yeah,
doing none of
target,
that. Literally, we would print up like 100,000 flyers, and the team would hit the streets. And we brought together this
hmm
mega team called, I think it was NYC Olympic Team, right? And it was like guys from the Bronx, it was guys from Brooklyn, like
crazy,
IDC, like Round the Clock, like my man Mark the Spark and Flavor King and NYCD, and a few other cats, man. And we've put 3,000 people in Hammerstein Ballroom. And see, me,
wow,
I was always about the business. I was like, yo, what's the door doing? My guys, Africa and them, they was taking their shirts off, popping bottles. They was out here, they was the ones that was fucking, we are the champions. That was them. And I remember my man Gav, right? Gavin came,
yeah,
Gav came to the party, and
yeah,
Gav was like, yo, bro. He's like, what the fuck is going on here? And I said, yo, the party's doing well. He's like, yo, give me 1 second. And he's like, I know security said they're about to shut it down, but give me 1 second. Gav gets on the phone, calls his sister, Foxy Brown,
uh-huh,
and
wow,
says, look, I don't know where the fuck you at. You need to get to 34th Street right now. And she came out. She came, and I happened to be in the back at the time, and she did like this mini concert. At the time, who was on the set? That was even
Crazy.
though we had already been rocking with Self, but like Self, that was a big party for a lot of different people in New York City for different reasons, right? But it was like,
Right.
I just remember at the very end, Foxy did that song. I forgot what it was called, but it was like whoa, 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 and she murdered that shit. And
Yeah, yeah.
it was a major chip, Drew, like a major chip. Like I walked out of there like, you can't tell us nothing. You can't tell us shit, man. We tore the city down. But guess what? 8 a.m., 9 a.m. the next morning,
Yeah.
it all starts over again. You feel what I'm
Yep.
saying? Like
Yep.
what you did in the past was great. What are you going to do next? And I
That's a great
learned that
lesson.
from that very day.
That's a great lesson. I think to your point, like you reach a place or a peak, never get comfortable, right? That was your chip, you know, 3,000 people at Hammerstein, Foxy Brown performing, everyone just like super lit, crazy party. But next day, reframe, reset your mind. It's like, what's next?
Right, right.
I think that's
We
super
had
important.
the spots we were at leading up to Hammerstein Ballroom
Hmm.
weren't cakewalks either. Like we were filling up
Right,
Mars, we were filling up Mars 2112, the Roxy, the Supper Club. We were
right.
shutting down the
Supper
Supper Club
Club,
all the time.
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's awesome. So as your promotional party group, as this is growing, where's that kind of pivot for you? Maybe we fast track it a little bit into like the radio space. Like who was that person, or how did you get that opportunity to start, you know, diving into that?
Well, one of the things that happened what happened is that me
Okay.
and Africa, we had a disagreement and it fragmented our relationship for a little bit and it led to me stepping away.
Mm,
Um, and I ended up from going from a party promoter to doing doors. But
mm,
what I did is I noticed I was even though we made good money, with the
right.
promoting stuff, I started noticing that there was the parties they were starting to change in New York City. Like a lot of the parties that
Right.
we did, they were dress up, they were upscale. And then we were
Right.
starting to see that parties were moving into that bottle service scene. Didn't
Hmm.
matter what you was wearing as long as you was buying a bottle, and little by
Right.
little that kind of deteriorated the scene, so to speak.
That's a good point
Um,
to point out.
yeah, so I started doing doors, and again, that opened me up to a whole nother scene downtown. Because mainly, the parties I was dealing with were Black, Hispanic. We
Hmm.
had some, people from other nationalities that would come in that were friends and stuff. But then when I started doing doors, I was down there in the West Side Playland. You know what I'm saying? At one point over there on the
Yeah.
far west side, it was like 15 clubs on one street. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. Stereo. Was it stereo?
Stereo, Spirit, remember that? Susie
Yeah. Yeah.
Wong's Home, Apartment,
Oh
like all
my
of that stuff.
gosh.
So I
I
was I
remember
was
that era.
doing, yeah, man. It's like it was like Amsterdam. If anybody watched The Wire, Amsterdam is where you could sell drugs freely.
Hmm.
Well, this was like Amsterdam for if you want to go out in nightlife.
27th Street.
27,
27th,
just
was it
walk down the block.
2711?
You could just go to
Yep.
all these different spots, right? But
Yeah.
what it did is then I started doing parties at like Hero, which was over there on 17th and 19th and 9th Avenue. Then I was down in the meatpacking district.
Hmm.
Opened me up to a totally different type of vibe, different type of crowd. And I
Right.
was equipped for it. And I was starting to make a lot more money, a lot more frequently. My parties used to be like once every 2 months, 3 months. I was
Wow.
doing this every week. So, that opened me up. I would say the relationship that I built with DJ Self from the
Hmm.
parties, Self set out for a campaign to get on the radio.
Mm.
And he eventually landed on Sirius XM on a channel. Was it on Hip Hop Nation? He was on Hip Hop Nation first. And actually it was another channel before Hip Hop Nation. But then when um it was like he was like, yo, he would be like, yo, on board. He's like, yo, come through or whatever. So I would stop
Yeah.
through every once in a while before we would go do our parties. And then little by little, this crew formed that was on air with him. And that's really
Hmm.
how I got, that was my exposure into radio as I, into those doors right there.
Yeah.
What it did for me is like at the time, yo, Drew, I was not thinking about no damn radio. In fact, in between that time, I ended up moving to Atlanta. I was
Really?
like, yo,
Okay.
yeah, yo, fam. What happened with that is that I had to get out of New York, and I wasn't on the
Right.
run or nothing, but there was a lot of things with me just mentally. Like if we're talking about L's, shit just
Right.
was not working out the way I wanted it to work out or how I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
going to work out. And my boy, my brother, L. Thomas, he hit me up. He was like, yo, I got an opportunity down here. We're starting to open up Jimmy Jazz stores. He's like, yo, I need your
Right.
help. You in? Before he can even ask me fully, bet when you need me, I'm out. I quit at Mount Sinai because that job I had kind of changed by that point. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really comfortable where I was at. And really it was me. You know, I wasn't happy, period. So I moved
Right.
down to ATL. I went down there. It was almost like, I wouldn't say it was a vacation because I really just kind of threw myself into this work, but I wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
getting out. I wasn't doing as much as I usually was. And by the time
Right.
I came back, I had a whole new outlook on how I was going to approach things. I was going to be more upfront. I was going to be more
Mm-hmm.
realistic. I was going to let
Right.
people know exactly how I felt.
Right.
And I wasn't going to bite my tongue. You know, I wasn't going to be
Right.
rude about it, but I definitely wasn't going to talk about it like in my head. If there was something that I
Right.
felt, I was going to let you know what it was. So I stayed in Atlanta for about 11 months. And by the time I got back, I had this plan. And I started the first part of that plan was going to self and saying to self, like, yo, look, man, I'm back. Yo, you think I could come back over to Sirius? He was like, yeah, man, your spot's reserved. Come on back. But when I got back, there was
Mm-hmm.
more people on the show. And it was like,
Mm.
how the fuck do you fit in? You know what I'm saying? There's too
Right.
many
Right.
people
Right.
talking. So, and at the time, I didn't really understand that too many people talking, but now, you know, it makes total sense. But I pretty much, you know, I looked at it and said, all right, well, let me figure this out. I know what I want.
Right.
I know where I want to go now. Let me figure this out.
Right. No, I think it's super important to note that too. Sometimes when you're going through the motions of just trying to make things happen, and in your position, you're part of this big promotional group, right? And eventually you start doing a door for this period of like nightlife, which I remember very vividly, where everyone was going out, especially on the west side, Chelsea.
Yep.
And you're hustling during your day job, but sometimes it's about taking a step back, you know, getting yourself out of the environment, and then put it, just really just kind of like assessing why all these things are happening. Because when you're
Right.
in it, it's very just like you have tunnel vision. You just see the goal, right? It's
Right.
hard to see like all the things that are happening. And then while you're in Atlanta during these 11 months, it's good that you were able to kind of reassess those goals and really come back to self to say like, hey, I really want to do this. So, you
Yeah.
know, that these are great lessons for people that may be experiencing similar things, what they're going through right now with whatever
Yeah.
they're experiencing. So I think
Yeah,
that's a great
man.
point.
And I think you know, the other part, you said it early on. There's nothing wrong with the hustle of being, you know, you do the 9 to 5, then the 5 to 9, 5 to 11, or the other 9 to 5, however you go ahead and
Hmm.
word it. But even after getting back from Atlanta, like I was here for about a year. I went back to doing doors. I was making, you know, good money in promotions, in nightlife. There's
Right.
ups, there's downs. Everybody's trying to stiff you if the money wasn't made properly, right?
Hmm.
And I didn't have a regular job. Eventually, my girlfriend at the time, you know, we weren't really together. We were together when we was in Atlanta. When I moved up, it was kind of up in
Right.
the air, and then she was like, "Nah, motherfucker, no, I'm moving up there, and you know,
Uh-huh.
there's opportunities for me." And we figured that out. And then shortly after that, Drew, we found out that we were going to have our daughter. So
Wow.
it's like, I worked in a hospital. I know what the fuck this shit costs. I don't have a
Hmm.
regular job. Guess what? I got to go back out into the workforce and do that just for health insurance.
Right.
And even within that,
Super
like
important.
5 years, I still hustle two things at the same damn time. And sometimes, you
Hmm.
know, burning both sides of the candle. But if you want
Right.
it, you'll find a way.
Right. No, it's super important to note that, especially when it comes to just responsibilities, right? Now you have a family, now your daughter, um, given all the circumstances, like you got to make this happen. It's like, okay, I got to pay the bills, but what's going through your mind, like, as you're, kind of, becoming a fixture, with self, right? Where was that kind of like that first opportunity where, okay, my voice is being heard, on the radio. Like actually really have this bug. I'm like, all right, I can really do this.
The all right, I'll give you the moment where it kind of was like, oh shit, and then I'll give you the moment where I can do this.
Hmm.
All while holding down a regular day job. At that time, I kind of transitioned out of doing parties and stuff, but I was running around doing still doing a lot of stuff in nightlife with self, so to speak.
Right.
One night, something went wrong with the equipment. He was like, "Yo, get on the mic. You gotta talk." I'm like, "Nigga, I don't know what the fuck to say. Like, what do you want me to say to all these people? What am I gonna say, man?" He's like, "I don't care. Just say some. Talk to him. Talk. Buy me some time." Tap tap. Yo, so check it out. Blah 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 blah. You know, you just start figuring it out. That wasn't the
Yeah.
moment where I figured out I could do this. That was more like, let me hold my man down and hope for the best, and we don't get in trouble. The moment
Right.
that I would say the moment that while I was still working, and I wasn't quite yet at the point where I thought I was going to quit my job and do this full time.
Hmm.
But we were having this conversation with Puff, with Sean, Puff Daddy, Diddy, Love Combs.
Wow.
And again, you got to remember, like, having a conversation with him for me was kind of like coming full circle. Again, I look at
Hmm.
signs all the time. I told you earlier, and
Hmm.
when we started talking, like a lot of my friends were doing their internship at Uptown. This is before Puff even became who Puff was. This is before Puff was the person who pretty much, you know, just gave the guidance for these super groups like Jodeci or
Right.
super new talent like Mary J. Blige.
Right.
So when we were about to have this conversation, I remember saying it to myself, like, fuck it, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. Like, I'm going to say what I want to say because I
Yes.
know this guy. He's not my best friend. I'm not going to make it like that, but I know him. I know a lot about this guy, not in a bad
Right.
way, in a just knowledgeable way. And I feel like I could be honest with him. I could have this conversation. If anybody can have this conversation, it's me. And my
Right.
partner at the time, I don't think he knew. Like, we had an understanding of what we were going to talk about, but I don't think he knew I was going to do what I was going to do. And it wasn't a bad thing because it was all energy in it. But once we got into it, my partner, he was trying to jump in. I was like, no, 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 no. Let me get this shit off my chest because I need him to understand this. But what I did in that, and I learned this obviously in working within radio up until that time. What I
Hmm.
did is I left like clues. You know me, you know me, you know me. And what I mean by that
Mm.
is I was saying certain things and giving him times and places that I knew he would know and I knew wasn't common knowledge. And it
Mm.
was like he I could see him sitting there. He was just like what he was trying to do was trying to figure out, like, who the fuck is this kid? How do I know him? Where is he from? So by the time we got into that conversation of like, yo, Puff, what you been doing? That shit ain't it. But this
Hmm.
this money making Mitch mixtape is more it. My man is back. It was just this crazy exchange, and by the time we left out of there, between him saying to people, "You need to really take this guy seriously. He's dope," and
Yeah.
between my program director Ron Mills really trying to, at the time he was trying to figure out a way to get people to open their eyes and take me seriously. I think that
Yeah.
all the timing, Drew, it finally lined up.
Culminated. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love hearing that, because people don't realize that, hitting your stride and catching that moment, and to your point, going back from Atlanta and having the confidence to like say what's on your mind and kind of reset, prepare you for that moment for Diddy,
Right.
and to have those people support you. So, like I said, it's a journey to get to that point, but once you hit that cross section, whoo, off to the
Right.
races,
Right.
off to the
And
races.
still, you want to know the funny part? That was a win, but I still wasn't getting paid. You know what I'm saying? There
Yeah.
still was no money coming in. You know what I'm saying? It was
Right,
like
right,
I'm still trying to figure it
right,
out.
right,
And
right.
I remember talking about, my love for basketball. I remember having a conversation with one of my boys, and he was just like, yo, just keep on putting up your reps. Just keep on putting up your reps, man. Like, I was one of these guys that I was always part of the entourage, right? There's
Mhm.
always someone in the entourage, though, that whoever the person whose entourage it is, he always
Right,
says, yo, go talk to him. Because,
right.
there's that responsibility, there's that trust level that you can handle whatever it is. I was always
Yeah.
that person. And, now after coming back from Atlanta, it was just like, yo, I'm realizing like I can't play the back anymore if I want to have this position. If I want to have this position, I have to speak up. I say it all the time. A closed mouth don't get fed. Well, guess what? If
No,
I
100%.
stay quiet and if I go all the way back here, Drew, you're not paying attention to me. You know what I'm saying? I'm sitting back here. You want to know
Right, right,
in this seat right here. So
right.
and I know when you hear this, for the people in your community who's listening to this, you'd be like, well, duh. It's
Yeah,
duh right now because you're looking at it as a viewer, but you'd be surprised how
right.
many people don't understand it until they have to go through it. And I had to go through it to really learn that part.
No, that's super huge, and that's a good testament to like all the things you went through, right? Leading into it, right? You went through the internship at Def Jam. You know that didn't necessarily work out to the goal that you wanted to pursue. You know, you're still figuring things out. You had that management opportunity, but obviously that didn't work out because it wasn't paid. You had to go back and get a real job. You know, work at Mount Sinai, which is there's nothing wrong with that, and it allowed you like to really sustain your life. You know, your life and actually pay your bills, which
Mm-hmm.
is the most important thing. Maintain your livelihood. And eventually you found the opportunity with Africa to promote um this crazy party, these crazy parties throughout New York City, whether it's downtown, eventually the Hammerstein, having just Foxy Brown open up and creating those moments, and then just a realization to this lifestyle of just working in nightlife didn't work out, but you wanted to take a break and go in Atlanta to reset, which is super important. Taking those 11 months to just really just find yourself and find like who you really are and what your goals were, and then going back and redeeming yourself, going to self and saying like, hey, can I get back and work with you? And now you're in this meeting with Puff and you're telling them exactly what's on your mind. And then you have these people behind your back that are just like supporting you from your PD and your peers. And yeah, just like a
Dude,
culmination of
that's
that.
impressive, man. That's very impressive. You got a memory of an elephant, bro. God damn, that's good, bro.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening. So I love to hear that. Just so I basically just contextualize your story and your journey with our audience, because they see you, what you're doing now, and maybe talk about, because now I want to highlight all the great things you're doing now. So talk about what you're doing with Hip Hop Nation, Sirius Radio, with Shade 405, and just in general, and all the other projects you're focusing on.
Yeah, well, daytimes, Monday through Friday, I'm on Hip Hop Nation from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Hmm.
Eastern time. On the late night side, I'm on Eminem Shade 45. So that's Tuesday through Friday, midnight to 3 a.m. And in both instances, I get the chance to speak to some amazing artists, probably some of your favorite artists, and talk about their music, talk about their life, talk about
Hmm.
current events. It's definitely my outlook on it is I always look at it from the fans' perspective, right? You got people who hate refs because they make themselves part of the game. Whereas
Right.
like you gotta be, look, everybody's here to see the basketball players. I don't think anybody
Right.
checking the ticket to see, yo, is Joe Smo, the referee, gonna be there tonight? No, we just want to make sure
Yeah.
it's a good referee game. In my
Hmm.
case, yeah, a lot of people do like the type of personality that I am, and I'm very aware of that. But everyone is here to see what this person has to say.
Hmm.
So for me, what I always try to make sure that I do is make it very authentic. Make it very authentic, make it a real conversation, and people leave with something from that, right? Like, yo, you think
Right.
these artists go through a car wash? They
Hmm.
ask the same questions all the time. People try to trip them up all the time if you're on that salacious shit. And if that's
Yeah.
what you do, cool. For me,
Right.
I knew I didn't want to be that. What I wanted to be was a person who was a documenter of the culture. Let's
Right.
talk about this. It's the reason why I have great conversations with people like Royce the 5'9", like
Yeah. I
Stolly,
love Royce.
like like somebody like a Rick Ross, who was. You got to be able to ask the tough questions and the questions that people want to know, but you have to be able to ask it in a way that's respectful, that makes someone comfortable to
Hmm.
answer your because it's coming from a good place. You know what I'm
For
saying?
sure. That's a great point.
Someone like like Rhapsody, somebody like Puff. You
I love
dig what I'm
Rhapsody.
saying? the ability for me to sit down with someone who threw a no-hitter like David Wells and be able to
Yeah.
ask him like, yo, David, keep it real. Was you really drunk that day or a hangover? And him say, hell yes. Like
Yeah.
that stuff is big. So I do that over on Sirius XM. Also do a lot of creative stuff in the form of, you know, telling stories where and consultative work with, you know, different fashion lines. Like I work with T.I., I've worked with Jason Jeter on some of their brands, whether it be a
Wow.
Hustle Gang or Strivers Row. I work with a few brands that are out there. Shout out to my man Dre Pabone and Evan over at
That's
and
dope.
my guys over at Vinny's like Jacob D and Polo. Shout out to Polo, we just had a little one. But being able to do that on that side of the culture. And then
That's dope.
also, you know, just to put up reps, so to speak, I
Yeah.
take it over from Sirius XM and I do it on my IG Live and speak to a lot of new artists. And that's the range with a series that I
So
have
important.
called Grind Setters. What I love about that is being able to speak to someone who's super established, but also be
Right.
able to speak to someone who's super new and still have great relationships with the young MA, with the baby, with
Yeah.
YG. You feel what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah, for sure.
very important to me. Where I can pick up the phone and be like, "Yo," and they still pick up.
No, that's super important too. You know, you're able to interview people on Sirius, and then also the emerging artists through your platform, Grind Setters on IG, and to give them an opportunity to talk about things that they're passionate about, especially the artists that are super early, or you may just be discovering right now. You may know their music, but you don't know anything about them. So
Right.
I think that's super important. But great, man. This was super dope. I really appreciate you taking your time on a Sunday during the holidays to share your gems and story. I really enjoyed it because it gave me like a time frame from your early influences in the Bronx to like what you're doing now. But before we end, we always kind of leave like a big lessons learned from each of our guests. So, all your experiences, what's been your biggest lesson learned that you want to share with the community?
I think the biggest thing that I can say from my experiences is that you're going to get dirty, you're going to get bumps,
Yep,
you're going to get bruised, your ego is going to be hurt. You're going to have a whole lot more no's than you have yeses. But all it takes is
facts.
one time. All it takes is that one time for you to experience the positive response. And then you
Mm-hmm.
start growing from that. And believe me, this whole thing, I used to hear this a lot. It's a contact sport. But what they
Yeah,
mean by that, some people might look at that like football, right, Drew? They might say, hey, it's a contact sport, like you're gonna get beat up. Yeah, you are.
right.
But the more contacts you make, the more times you have a chance to have a door open for you. And I
So
would take it
true.
with that. Like, you know, that whole keep going. Yeah, it sounds cliche, but it's the simplest form of an answer that is in its purest form. You got to keep going if you really want this. And if you
Right.
don't, you know, you'll find out about that very soon. So keep going.
No, it's so true. I mean, it's not going to necessarily happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next year. But if you're passionate about it, you're going to keep trying to like strive for it, regardless of what people are saying or what doors are being closed. So it's so true. But great, appreciate you, man. Shout out to the Digilogue community for tuning in. This is episode 15. We're gonna make sure
15.
we got 15 episodes during this pandemic.
Young Kid
Reach some
Theater.
milestones.
Yeah.
No, facts. And then we're gonna make sure we have your info in the description. Make sure to follow Gray and all the things that he's doing on socials. And then also make sure to subscribe to our channel for more great stories from incredible music creatives that are impacting culture right now. And can't wait to share new episodes coming soon. So shout out Digilogue. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.